I did watch the development of that deal between the administration of former US President Donald Trump and the Taliban roll out with alarm, to be honest with you, because what they did was completely bypass and marginalise the government of the Republic of Afghanistan. We had spent, as allies, Australia as well as NATO and the United States, almost 20 years at that stage, supporting and bankrolling the government and training the armed forces. The US alone spent more than $80 billion training and developing and arming and maintaining the Afghan military and police forces to fight the Taliban. And so by bypassing all of that structure and ignoring the fact that the international community also had a long presence in Afghanistan, what the Trump administration effectively did was surrender on behalf of not only the United States but the rest of the Western allies and hand victory to the Taliban. And immediately that deal was signed on the 29th of February 2020, the Taliban declared victory. So that's what basically happened, and that's what the generals were saying in the Armed Services Committee hearings, that deal, the Doha deal as it's called, handed victory to the Taliban.
Yeah, and it seems as if they were trying to impress upon the then incoming Biden administration to hit pause, but it seems right across the board the US had had enough of that war. Alarmingly, though, they say there are still concerns about the security situation of Al-Qaeda, of IS regrouping.
Well, the Taliban have been hand in glove with Al-Qaeda for 25 years. The reason that the country was invaded in 2001 after the 9/11 attacks in the United States was because Al-Qaeda had been given sanctuary in Afghanistan by the Taliban. The Taliban enabled and were effectively collaborators in those attacks. So there should be no surprises now. Suddenly we're finding out that Al-Qaeda has a presence and a long presence in Afghanistan and works very closely with the Taliban. The Trump administration and the people who were involved in making that deal knew this too. They were told over and over before the peace talks that were also a part of this deal started in September last year, that there had been no effort, despite agreeing by the Taliban to cut ties with Al-Qaeda. And really, honestly, to do so would be like taking the salt out of the sea. They are intermarried. They are intertwined. There is no separating one from the other. That's just a fact.
Yeah, which then raises concerns about the ongoing security. But at the same time, the country is in the grip of a close financial collapse. There is no money coming into the country, supplies are running out, and they're heading into winter.
Oh, yes, it's a really catastrophic situation already. All of the, as you say, financial assets and bank reserves of the country were frozen very quickly after the August 15 takeover by the Taliban and the collapse of the Republic government. People haven't been paid. They don't have any cash. The banks, the ATMs were running out of cash even before I left. As you might remember, I was on the last commercial flight out of Kabul on the 15th, and I had been going around town looking for cash a few days before then, and it was in very limited supply. But not only that, the borders have been closed, and so imports of food have also been constrained. So inflation is soaring. So people have no cash and nothing to buy. We're facing hunger anyway. Every year, the World Food Programme warns that millions and millions of people are vulnerable to starvation. It's no different this year, even before the collapse, and now, of course, it's worse. In Kabul itself, which is a big, busy, crowded city, people had been flooding in from areas all over the country to escape the fighting before the collapse, and they've been camping out in open ground, in parks, with nothing for months already. So it's a really terrible, terrible situation, economic collapse and humanitarian catastrophe all at once, and the Taliban having no capacity.
And that's to that point exactly. The Taliban sort of handed victory literally by the Trump administration with no real preparation for government, no real clue as to how to stabilise this country. Is it inevitable that humanitarian aid is going to have to be provided, and how do you protect it from corruption?
Well, it hasn't been protected from corruption in the past 20 years. And when you're looking at now a regime that is unaccountable, let alone not having the capacity to distribute, who can imagine how much worse it has to be? Also, there isn't any attempt, as far as I've noticed, by the UN or by other international NGOs to use the leverage of the need for aid and relief to get the Taliban to make any concessions. So I have friends who worked for the former government who are still living in Kabul and have been applying to the NGO organisations like the UN for jobs because they need people to do these jobs. And they've been told, sorry, because you worked for the last government, we can't employ you, and we can't employ anybody without a letter of approval from the Taliban. So it's a really mixed, awful situation that really, if you look at it on the surface or beyond, it looks like it can only get worse. So then the question has to be, when does the international community unilaterally start helping Afghans who are in desperate need, beyond the apparent need for permission from the Taliban? Do they wait until people are dropping dead in the street of starvation? Who knows how bad it's going to get?
And of course, the Taliban continue to try and present this image that they are, are not going to be cracking down, that they are going to, at some point, provide women with some guidelines as to what freedoms they'll be granted. But obviously, we're seeing every day stories that contradict that.
Yes, actions are speaking much louder than words, of course. And as you say, they keep saying, well, we have to create the mechanisms, people should be patient, we have to make sure that girls who go to school are going to be safe, though they don't say from what. But this is what happened, Bev, last time the Taliban had control in Afghanistan from 1996 to 2001. Just be patient, we're getting there, we're going to come up with the mechanisms, blah, blah, and they never happened. Things only got worse. And I can only see that is going to be the situation now. As you say, every day, more rules, more restrictions on the movements and ability of women to live their lives.
Good to talk, as always, Lynne. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bev.